Hey, I'm Alex Radcliffe from Board Game Co. and today I'm reviewing The Crew, The Quest for Planet 9, and The Crew Mission Deep Sea. Now, this is not going to be Play This Not That. That's a format I have on the channel where I compare and contrast and recommend one game versus another. These two games have enough similarity, enough overlap, that really I'm just going to review The Crew, and I'll talk about the differences between the two systems, between the two games, which one I prefer at the end. But The Crew from Cosmos Games is a game system of trick-taking, cooperative trick-taking. That's the basic idea of the game. You're going to go ahead and divvy up the cards in the game to the various players. So you're going to sit there and have your hand of cards, and then before you actually start, once you have your hand of cards, you're going to lay out a variable number of these cards. Now, this all depends on mission difficulty. The game has different systems, has a little logbook, it has a little escalation of the way you handle it, but the core idea, the core concept, is you'll be laying out a certain number of cards equal to the difficulty of what you're going on with, and that difficulty is dependent based on the player count, because some tricks, some goals are harder to play with depending on the number of players you have in the game. Let's go ahead and just reveal a few of these so we can cover them. This one is an objective that I will win at least 3 9s. That's ambitious. Maybe you can do it, maybe not. Let's find out. We have another one. I will win a trick using a 3. That's also pretty ambitious. I mean, winning a trick with a 3, that's a low number. The numbers range from 1 to 9 over here, and so that is a tough one. If you can win with a 3, I mean, great, good for you. Now, you are working together, which makes it a little bit easier. This is not a trick-taking game where you're working against each other, where winning with a 3 is even more impressive, but nonetheless. Then we have I'll win 0 tricks. Potentially viable, although depending on your hand, maybe not. And then lastly, I will win none of the first 4 tricks. Now again, you're going to be drawing a certain number of the cards depending on the difficulty you're going with. It won't necessarily always be equal to the number of players. Sometimes it will, sometimes it won't. But the general idea is, let's say we're playing a 5-player game right now. If we're playing a 5-player game, one at a time the players are going to go ahead and choose a mission. They're going to choose the mission based on what they know about their hand. This is cooperative, but you cannot talk to each other. And so you're sitting there looking at your hand and you're like, well, I have a bunch of these submarines over here. These submarines are very helpful for winning tricks because they're the trump suit. And so I am going to go ahead and between my submarines, can I do it? I mean, I have every single submarine. I literally have every single submarine. So you know what? I'm going to say that I will win at least 3 9s. Meanwhile, someone else at the table is cringing because they have 2 9s and they thought they were the best person for this trick. But either way, I grab that. We move to the next person. The next person tries to choose one of them. Now, this is where a player can choose not to choose one of these goals if there are less goals than the number of players. In other words, you can pass if all players other than yourself will still get a goal. And because we're playing a 5-player game with 4 goals, 1 player can pass. So Sally, to my left, sits there and thinks through her hand. She really thinks that she's definitely going to win at least 1 trick because she has 2 9s in her hand. She was hoping she would get this one, but she doesn't have any 3s, so that's going to be hard. And she's going to win none of the first tricks. That might be viable. She's not sure. She goes ahead and passes. The other players go ahead and choose their goals, the specific goals that they have as players of what they're trying to do, and then you start playing because this is where you now all have your objectives set, and you have to try to figure out how to win. And you have to do that knowing your own hand and without communicating. Now, you do have one method of communication, which is this little token over here, and this token can be used to put down a card. You can say, hey, 1 second, hold up. This, I'm just putting that over there. And if you put your token on the top of the card, it means that you're saying this is the highest yellow you have in your hand. If you put it on the bottom, it's the lowest yellow. And if you put it in the middle, it's your only yellow. And so choosing when and how to communicate that one piece of information, because you can do that one time and only one time in the game, the table knows both what you have now, as well as whether it's the highest, lowest, or only card of your hand, which is very helpful for players determining what they can potentially do. Because you're sitting here saying you're going to win at least 9 tricks. You know that's the highest yellow, and players can try to extrapolate information outwards from there. And this is where you just start playing the trick. It's a typical trick-taking game. You go ahead and play a card. Other players have to follow suit if they are able to. Whoever plays the highest card of that suit wins the trick. If you break the color of the suit, meaning if you have no pinks and you play a 2 yellow, or even if you play a 9 yellow, the highest card of the lead suit will win. So a 9 yellow will not beat an 8. But this is where the submarines come into play. If a player has to play a submarine because they don't have any pinks, a 1 submarine will beat any other suit, except, of course, other submarines of a higher value, of which there are 1 through 4. There's 1 through 9 of the regular colors, and then 1 through 4 of the submarines. That's the core concept. You sit there, you have your trick taking, you're trying to figure out how to lead, how to lose, when to follow, everything you're trying to do. This player over here is trying to win 0 tricks, and they have 2 9s in their hand. They're trying to figure out how to win 0 tricks with 2 9s. Fortunately, I have some submarines, and I'll help them with that, but they don't necessarily know that because you can only communicate so much in this game. And that's basically the Crew Mission Deep Sea. That's what's going on in this game. The Crew Quest Planet 9 is the same basic game. It's the one that came first, and it did the same core similar concept. The difference is instead of having this giant deck full of different goals with different numbers and different things going on, it had this deck over here. This deck, which instead of having, again, just, variable things like that, you had things like specific numbers you'd go for. So you'd play out these numbers and play out specific goals of, I have to win that corresponding number. I have to win the pink 8. I have to win the green 6. And so it's more simple and straightforward in what it's doing. It does not in any way lack for being an amazing game. I mean, the Crew plus Quest for Planet 9 is the reason we have the Crew Mission Deep Sea, because of how well it did and how much it took off. But it's a simpler, more straightforward, in which you are going for specific numbers. You have a matching deck to the 40 cards you have here. You have this, is it 40? I think it's 40. You have the matching deck to the same 40 cards you have here. You have them over here. Strictly speaking, you can get the Crew Mission Deep Sea and play the Crew Quest for Planet 9 as long as you just have a deck of 40 cards of different colors. You can literally use your own little set of basic playing cards. The games are fairly cheap, so I'm not specifically encouraging that. I'm just saying, in theory, you don't need a lot of extra components to play both these games at the same time, which brings us to the review part of things. And I'll specifically note when my opinion is different for one versus the other, but the games are similar enough that most of what I have to say about these games is going to be true for both of them. Starting off with ease of play. Both these games have very clear and easy rules. The teach is even easier because the rules you actually have to go through the rule book. The teach, I literally can just throw a few objectives on the table, and assuming players know basic trick taking, if they don't, I can teach them that, and then get them up and running very quickly. Literally just play by showing. This is one of those games you can play by showing. Hey, go ahead, great, okay, look, you have this goal, you have that, now let's play the trick, and you try to figure out if you can win that. That's your objective. That's all you're trying to do. We're working together, we're on the same team. It is very easy to get people up and running by just showing them how to play the game. The table space is practically non-existent. It's, every player has a little play space, nothing, assuming you can fit players around the table, you can play this game. And then the game time is amazing. Generally, games will run anywhere between 5, if you lose, or 5 to maybe 20 minutes per game, so you can knock out as many games as you are comfortable playing. You can sit and play this game for 2 hours straight, and you can play this once and knock out a 10-minute game and call it a day. As far as player count, this is a 2 to 5 player game. I've played this at every player count except for 2 players. Given how much of a step backwards I think even 3 players is, down from 4, I don't think I'm particularly interested in playing it at 2. It might function, but I would say while 3, 4, and 5 are all playable, 3 is already a big step backwards for 4, at least for myself, and so I feel 2 would be even a further step backwards. The more tricks, the more things in motion, the more of an accomplishment it feels to actually get your trick. Winning a trick, or not winning a trick, or whatever, any form of manipulation, winning 3 9s when you have 3 players is much less of a struggle than winning 3 9s when you have 4 or 5 players, and so I like the higher player counts. It just feels more rewarding when you get things done. As far as interaction, I mean, the interaction is huge, although in a weird way, because it's not really talking, you're not communicating, you're working together and trying to think through how you're going to do things, how other players are doing things. The cards other players play and when will also give you more information when they choose to use your token. So you're basically working as a team. This is not a solo game by any sense of the word. As far as what I like, don't like, and can see others not liking, starting off with that sense of teamwork. That sense of teamwork is huge in this game. You feel like you're working together, again with the caveat that you're not able to directly talk and communicate, so it doesn't have the typical planning you might expect in some cooperative games, but that also means this game is very much not victim to the alpha player aspect of one player dominating the game and the conversation, because I can't. I don't know what's in your hand. The best or worst I can do is shout at you after you screw up, which is a potential problem that we'll get to in this game. And the sense of escalation of difficulty. Both game systems have a sense of escalation as the way they slowly start you off and ramp you off, and then games get progressively harder. More and more happens to make the game more difficult. And it has a sort of campaign. They both have a campaign aspect. I typically don't play with a campaign. I usually just dive in with some sort of mission difficulty that I think is suitable to the players at the table. But in theory, you can go through a campaign of escalating difficulty. If you lose, you repeat, you keep going, all those things. Again, I don't particularly use that, but it's available if it's something you want. I do like the sense of escalation of difficulty. I just don't really use it in connection with the campaign. Deducing the optimal plays is huge in this game. And it's one of the best puzzles in the game for me, because sometimes it's easy. Sometimes it's easier to think through, okay, great, I have to win 0 tricks. I have to figure out how to do that. But the truth is actually it's not easy. I will win no tricks in the first 4 tricks. That is often easier. It might require a sense of communication. If you have that pink 9, you might quickly want to play it on the table, showing people, just a heads up, I have the pink 9, I can't have pink cards played because I might have to actually turn around and win that trick. And so you do have to utilize your tokens as required, but I will say some tricks are easier than others. Versus something like I will win 0 tricks has a sense of, okay, great, you have to plan out your entire hand across the course of the entire game and think through when, how, when to, I mean, you can never lead. That's part of the problem. You can never lead because if you lead, inherently it means you've won a trick. And so there's this weird balance of trying to think through when to play something, when to throw a card, and all those aspects. the game has a lot of deducing the optimal play, combined with the communication you have of showing people what you have, or even just playing cards that will give them information that they now know, is a lot of rewarding aspects to that gameplay. And then the playtime to strategy ratio. Like I said already, this is a game that runs 5 to 20 minutes, and the amount of strategy you have in that playtime is huge. The amount of decision space you have is absolutely huge. I love that ratio that both these games give. As far as things I don't like, starting off with Crew, the Quest for Planet 9, because this is only relevant to this particular one, is the variability of the game. I find that Mission Deep Sea gives me a lot more variability to the experience. The Crew Quest for Planet 9 gives you more difficulty scaling, but not a lot of variability in that difficulty scaling. Because you're always trying to go for specific cards, it does get more difficult, does feel more difficult, but there's not new twists and tricks or new things to take into account. Winning 0 tricks or not winning the first 4 tricks or winning a trick with a 3 are different mental challenges than just win these cards. And so I find that the Crew Mission Deep Sea inherently gives you more variability to the experience, including there are sometimes where you just have to win certain cards, so it ends up having some of the aspects of Quest for Planet 9, plus a lot more variability baked in. As far as a critique for both games, it can be very easy to blame others for stupid plays or be blamed yourself. Going back to what I said a minute ago, that sense of teamwork and the sense of having no alpha player, you can absolutely, and I've seen it happen a lot, where players can get frustrated at another player, like, obviously the right move was playing your yellow 7. How did you not see that? Like, how? And I don't find that frustration, at least in the game groups I've played in, I don't find it ever comes from a sense of actual frustration. It comes from a sense of, oh, come on, you could have seen that, and it's friendly in its nature, but it doesn't mean that the person on the other end still doesn't feel that. In a weird way, the replacement of the alpha player, the fact that you don't have that, but then you play some sort of suboptimal card at the wrong time, ruining the entire game not ruining the game, that's the wrong terminology, losing the game for everyone at the table, can have some players be a little frustrated that you didn't see that pattern. And so that's something that the game can be victim to. It's something that, fortunately, for the most part, it doesn't happen a lot, because it does require, I would say it requires players that are either too aggressive or players that are not too aggressive, but they are saying the words, and a player who's sensitive to that. And so if you have the wrong grouping of players, it can be a factor at the table. It's something that is a potential con, that sense of one player letting down the team, but for the most part, it's not an issue. It is an issue sometimes. As far as what I can see others not liking, you can have hands that are just too easy and therefore not rewarding. Sometimes the combination of the way the cards come out combined with your hands gives you an easy pathway forward, an easy card to take, a card that works for you. And then the flip side of that is you can have cards that are just, you can have hands that are just way too difficult for the cards you got. That sense of luck, of swinginess, even though there's a sense of escalation of the difficulty level in general, within any given game because of the cards you have and because of the missions you might get, you can have too easy or too difficult missions that potentially make it feel either not rewarding or like you never had a chance to begin with. As far as final thoughts on the Crew Quest for Planet 9 and the Crew Mission Deep Sea, they are both excellent games that are as accessible as they are rewarding. There's a real sense of teamwork in both these games as you sit there with other players trying to figure out how to handle the missions and escalating to get tougher missions, tougher and tougher missions, to make it more and more of a challenge together. I've seen people frustrated by the games, but for me, I'm always, despite the sense of frustration that players can have, overall I would say for the most part it is an incredibly rewarding experience. Both of these games have joined my collection as absolute staples for the filler games when I want something that I'll play at the end of the night that I tell myself it'll only be one game and it ends up being 3 or 4 on a regular basis. Rating wise, I do have them slightly different. I have the Crew the Quest for Planet 9 as a solid 4 for me. It's a great game, does a great job, but it is one that is just a little bit lower on my rating scale because of the lack of variability. The Crew Mission Deep Sea, it didn't replace Quest for Planet 9 because I like having both experiences available. I also find the Quest for Planet 9 is a drop easier to teach people because there's less nuance to what's going on. Both of them are definitely in my collection, but I would say Mission Deep Sea is the one that I'm usually going to pull out and pick. This is a 4.5 for me out of 5. This is a 4 out of 5. Both incredibly solid trick-taking games, and I'm someone who generally does not like trick-taking, although apparently if you find me the right ones, that is changing a bit. As far as other recommendations, if you like these games, Hanabi's also going to give you that sense of silent teamwork and cooperation in terms of a similar feeling of the game while being totally different genre. And we have the Shipwreck Arcana, same basic idea of silent communication, trying to figure things out together. And then finally, if you're not looking for a cooperative game, but you're looking for the other trick-taking game that has worked for me, Ghosts of Christmas from Board Game Tables is the only other trick-taking game that I have really grown to love. Until next time, I'm Alex Radcliffe from Board Game Co. I hope you found this video helpful, and as always, have a good one.